And Police Minister Ginny Anderson is with me. Good evening to you. Nice to see you. Thank you for your time.
Kia ora, thank you, Chris.
Youths are being more brazen than ever before. You've got the likes of them smashing their cars through Hornby Mall last weekend. How do we stop this type of behaviour? And as Police Minister, is there actually anything we can do, given the fact that the majority of the time they are underage?
I acknowledge, Chris, it is a complex issue and it's a difficult one, and I particularly hear the frustrations of community when they see this type of offending happening. I think it's important, though, that we put it into context that overall youth offending has been tracking down over a period of about 10 years. But what we've seen post-COVID is a small group of repeat offenders that are being more brazen, as you say, in doing these types of activities. And it's for this reason that we specifically developed programs that are a circuit breaker, and they are called circuit breaker. So within a 24 to 48 hour period, young people are having a full wraparound assessment to make sure they're not back out reoffending.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because they are reoffending, because as you've said, and as the police commander here in Christchurch has said, most of them are a small cohort, quote unquote, and they are recidivist offenders. So the minute they're taken home to mummy and daddy, out they go the next day because they're underage.
So a lot of those young people might not be brought home to mummy or daddy because they're coming from really complex family backgrounds. And from the information I've seen, it's often family violence, mental health. More than one person in that family is already within the justice system or has had an interaction. So those that have gone through the two programs we've set up, Kotahi Te Whakaaro and Circuit Breaker, we're seeing that 82% of those young people are not reoffending.
Police Superintendent Lane Todd, though, said something completely different last night, suggesting it was recidivist offenders.
I had said that. I was quite clear that overarching that we've seen a decrease in youth offending by about 63% for young people and about 64% for children. But within that, there is a small group of repeat offenders. But when those young people are being put through the circuit breaker program, we are seeing that they are not reoffending. And it's for that reason that I'm very interested on seeing how we can expand those programs further. And I know that Christchurch is one of those areas that I'm keen to take a look at.
What is the circuit breaker program? I've never heard of it.
It's a great program. So here's a good example. A young man who was in Auckland, he was 14 years old. Police found him because he had broken his leg when doing a ram raid. He was found with his leg broken on the dashboard. So when he went through hospital, his family were visited. It took 8 visits for the family to actually accept some help. So because there were a number of children in that household, because mum had some mental health issues, dad had disengaged, it actually took 8 attempts to be able to have a coffee with the father of that whānau, and only at that point in time was a full plan put in place to get those children into school, to get them uniforms, to get some assistance for mum, and to get a plan in place. And it's that sort of action that I actually think is a great opportunity to reach into families where additional assistance is required, but there might be a high level of mistrust of police or oranga tamariki that's preventing them from getting the services they need.
Okay, I want to come back to some of the families in just a moment, because I've spoken to about 3 mothers of ram raid children, but I wanted to discuss Christchurch residents. I think it's fair to say many of us don't feel safe anymore, to the point that they're holding public meetings and, in one case, insisting on laws that need to be changed.
Our youth justice system does a great job, and a big reason of why we do a great job is police are now fully resourced. We've had, come at the end of next month, we'll reach 1,800 additional police officers. That means that we have the resources in place.
Are many of those in Christchurch? Because I spoke to a police officer last night at the scene of yet another serious crime, and he said they're stretched to capacity. They don't have enough officers to deal with the amount of crime, not just youth crime, that's happening in our city, though. So are those officers coming to Christchurch?
They are coming to Christchurch, and I note that Christchurch is one of the most popular areas in New Zealand to be a police officer, and there is a waiting list to get in there as a new recruit.
Okay, that's good news. The Christchurch parents, I know that you've seen this article of 3 separate families committing crimes. They've actually said to me they want their children charged. They say they're out of control. The time has come to create some legislation that offers a specific law for their kids. What do you say to that? These are mothers and fathers on the brink of despair because they cannot control their kids. They've been to Oranga Tamariki, they've been to youth justice facilities, they've pleaded with police to arrest their kids, but they can't because they're underage.
My heart goes out to families that are going through a tough time with young people. I appreciate it. It's not easy for parents at all, and it's not easy for those young people either. What our youth justice system does is it works hand in hand with care and protection alongside the youth justice system to look at each individual case and provide a bespoke plan for that family. If those plans aren't working, there are next levels to go to. But the last place 11 or 12-year-old should really be is before a judge in a youth facility. So if we are able to get into families like the example I gave you and provide wraparound support, that's the best way not to breed further criminals in New Zealand.
In hindsight, was it a mistake to limit police powers to pursue offenders in stolen vehicles? Because a lot of these kids that are performing ram raids now, they know they can simply get away with it for a limited period of time because they can't be stopped by police.
Those are decisions that are made by police, not by the minister. But I will note that we've got legislation coming up that will take away a licence for longer if it's a second offence for fleeing. And in addition to that, we've got stronger powers to be able to restrain or take away a vehicle if they're being used in a reckless manner on our roads.
But the thing is, these kids don't have a licence in the first place. Most of them are about 12, 13, 14 years of age, and the vehicles are stolen.
Police will weigh up those decisions in every given instance to weigh up community safety, also the safety of the people in the car, and make those decisions. That's not an area where we can provide bespoke legislation. They are operational guidelines that police need to weigh up, and sometimes those are done in the heat of a moment.
A business owner I spoke to in Shirley had her store raided for a second time in a month, in fact, a month to the day. She still hadn't heard back from police from the first attack, and this is where a shop was raided by 12 youths. I mean, it looked like something from a movie. They smashed up her store, completely ruined it, and to make matters worse, she said the government's retail crime unit said they were too busy to attend to her shop, and she had to go on a waiting list, and they couldn't attend. She's just opened up a new store just down the road, and she's still none the wiser whether these 12 youths have been arrested, and she's still waiting to hear back from government support. There's something seriously wrong going on here.
It's disappointing to hear that. Both the programs that I administer, which is one as Minister for Small Business, and that's done with fog cannons, run by MV, and the second is the Police Retail Crime Prevention. Both have been remarkably successful. And I did note, I've kept a close eye on Christchurch, and some of those recent ram raids, 2 incidents where the offenders were unable to actually steal items was when there were security measures in place.
That's
so
true.
I think that does demonstrate that when there's security measures in place, they are an effective tool to prevent offending. So fog cannons in Canterbury, we've got 60 that have already been installed under the MB scheme, and we've got another 119 that are approved and ready to be installed. So there's been a voucher allocated to that business. In terms of the police scheme, we've got 13 stores in Christchurch that have been completed and another 27 that have been improved for installation. So it does take a little bit more time when it's the full scoping out, and that's the Police Retail Crime Prevention scheme, because what they do in addition to that is work with the owner to have a safety plan in place to know how to keep themselves safe, how to utilise the button that they would have around their neck that activates the fog cannon, and also how to actually keep yourself safe and things like not to pursue the offender is an example of some of the advice that police would give.
You went to school in Christchurch, right? You grew up in Christchurch?
I did. I'm a Linwood girl. I grew up in Cashel Street.
Good. It's nice to hear. I just want to read you some headlines that I had to go through my website only in the last 2 weeks and get your reaction to this, because I don't know. Let me just read you some of them now. For example, A 16-year-old boy punched and kicked in the head in Christchurch's Cathedral Square in broad daylight. 4 teenagers crashed stolen car. Owner of one of 5 Christchurch businesses targeted by youth offenders wants parents held accountable. Respected Christchurch church leader described as kind-hearted attacked while trying to help an injured person in Fendleton. I mean, this is not the Christchurch I recognise. Is this the Christchurch you recognise?
It's not acceptable. I'm not comfortable and at all happy with the level of crime we are seeing, and particularly retail crime, particularly youth offending. It is not an easy job to do. We will continue to work in this space and continue to work closely with communities to get the best possible ways to keep people safe. But I would encourage all small business owners, if they're not already engaged with police, to look at the fog cannon subsidy scheme as a quick and efficient way to equip themselves to be safer.
Just finally, Minister, and I really appreciate your time this evening. How do you think, are you confident that these types of crimes will eventually decrease as either youths are taken away in custody or they get bored or they choose to do something else? Because there is a sense here living in Christchurch that when you go to the mall or the shop or the dairy, I think it's fair to say that many people are on edge now, and it's not a nice way to live.
I think that's a fair point you do raise, Chris. The underlying drivers of these types of crime primarily are family harm. We have high levels of family violence in New Zealand, and young people committing these crimes have largely come from families where either physical or sexual violence have become normalised within their homes. This is unacceptable. This is why we continue to invest in family violence and to continue to encourage people to report family violence. It is unacceptable that a young person should grow up with violence being a normal part of their daily lives, and this is something that as a country we need to change.
Police Minister Ginny Anderson, really nice to speak with you. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thanks, Chris.